Howdy, folks, and welcome to the Hunting Stories podcast. I'm your host, Michael, and we got a really good one for you today. Today, we're actually connecting with, he's a social media influencer, but he's absolutely, definitely a hunter. If you actually are on social media, I guarantee one of your hunting buddies has sent you one of his videos. They're hilarious. I've posted several on my Instagram page. If you aren't following me, get on there and follow me. But then if you aren't following Trent, make sure you check out the show notes and give him a follow as well. That being said, let's go ahead and kick this thing off. I don't want to steal any of his thunder, but Trent, thank you for tuning in. Now let's go ahead and let Trent tell you some of his stories. Thank you. All right, Trent, welcome to the Hunting Stories podcast, brother. How are you?
I'm good, Michael. I appreciate you having me.
Brother, I'm super excited to have you here, man. I've been following you for a while, and you are one of the funniest people, I think. Well, now I know you, but the one of the funniest people, I think, on Instagram and social media and all that stuff. And so I'm super excited to hear some of your stories, man. So let's start this thing off right. Why don't you introduce yourself to the folks that are listening in case they don't already know who you are?
So my name is Trent Ellis. I'm from Northeast Mississippi. I've been doing social media and YouTube now for a little over a year, so I'm pretty new to the game. But I'm just you hear this all the time, but I'm just a good old boy like the rest of us. Yeah. I guess I'm just not afraid to make fun of myself as much as everybody else is on camera, that is, and put it out for the world to see. But yeah, no, man, I'm born and raised Manatee, Mississippi, outside of Tupelo. And when I was 17, I joined the Marine Corps and was in for 4 years, got out after my contract ended in 2017. So I started in 2013, got out in 2017, met the love of my life while I was in, and married her, brought her back, and we went to college at Etowah Community College for 2 years in forestry, and then transferred to Mississippi State. My wife finished her degree in forestry and wildlife management there.
Awesome.
I went into an online business degree from there, got into insurance and investments in 2020 and got fully investment licensed in 2021 and pretty much did that full time. Well, I did that full time from 2020 to last year when I started doing social media. And I just, I just got to seeing a lot of people online doing some funny stuff. And I was like, man, I've always kind of thought I was the class clown and, could do some, could do some relatable stuff for especially the folks here in the South, and I was like, heck, I'll just try it, try it for a week. Yeah. And if I don't hate it, I'm just going to continue doing it and see what happens, and maybe 10 years from now, I won't have to pay for my hunting stuff. So I did, and it started doing okay. And I just kept going and we're here. So we haven't made it or anything like that, but we're still doing it. So whatever that means.
Man, it's a lot of fun too. I think you recently posted a video where you were transitioning. God, that video cracked me up, man. I was like, "Where's he going with this?" And I when it got to the punchline, which I don't want to ruin for anybody. When you got to the punchline, I was like, "Motherfucker!" Okay, good on you, man. You had me.
Yeah. It's funny. I can't remember. I think I did that short video. I can ruin the punchline. I think I did that short video after I actually killed that buck. So what happened was I've had a crossbow. There's a place in Mississippi that you go, and I'm not going to ruin it because I know how us public land guys are, which I've been more private land in the last year. I've kind of come over to the dark side, but I know how guys are with burning spots, so I'm not going to say it. But there's a place here in Mississippi that if you go hunt it, most people are going to have a crossbow. And I bought it just for that. And I went out there
to stay competitive, or is it like regulations that you have a crossbow?
No, it's like you can hunt in this area with a compound, but even if you have one inside of 30 yards, your likelihood of capitalizing because of the way you have to hunt Like I said, I know I'm being very vague here, but
That's fine. That's fine.
but basically, it's you need to have a crossbow in there if you're gonna go in there and kill one. I mean,
Yeah.
because when you draw back, if one's at 20 or 30 yards, it's gonna see you. I mean,
Okay.
40 yards could see you. But anyway, but I never did use it. I went and hunted with it a couple of times, never got to use it, and so fast forward this past fall or this past September, a buddy of mine, Corey Lear with Monarch Hunting Products out of Texas, got a shoot house from him, and we set it up in the field here behind the house, and a Monarch blind and a Monarch feeder, and it's about 40 yards, right at 40 yards from the blind. But his blind has bow windows, and I'm like, I'm gonna shoot a deer in a food plot with a compound bow. It's gonna happen. This is gonna be good, something like the Drurys you'd watch on the Drurys or Midwest Whitetail or whatever. And so I had a buck out here that was a big deer for me. It was a big deer. I mean, he had a brow tine that was 10 plus inches long.
Wow.
And
that's a crazy brow tine.
Yeah. Well, I had gotten pictures of him all late summer up until the velvet season, and I hunted him the 3-day velvet season that we had and saw him every day, but could not. Something happened every day for him not to come in and give me a shot. So fast forward another, month, we'll say, and he comes out, man, and I mean I hunted here behind the house like crazy. I mean, just every time I was going out and hunting this buck, and he finally comes out in the daytime to where like he was normally coming out right at the last minute of shooting light. So I wasn't going to shoot him, and I couldn't get him on camera. And I'm like, man, I'm not going no, I'm not doing it. And, but he finally come out like 20 minutes before daylight or 20 minutes before daylight ends. And, I was like, this is working out perfect. Like I've already got a small buck at the feeder eating. He's not, worried about anything. Like as soon as I saw him at the edge of the tree line, I mean, he was at the feeder 5 minutes later.
Okay.
Walks up and I pull back. I got the camera set on him and he's at 40 yards, 42. And I pull back and I got my 40 yard, I got the dial on 40 and he moves. And I'm at the point now where I'm like, screw it. I don't care. I don't care if I don't get this shot on camera. I'm fixing to shoot this freaking deer.
Yeah.
So I don't move the camera, but I sit there and hold him. And I counted up later while I edit the footage. And I ended up holding that bow back for 1 minute and 58 seconds before I shot. And what it was when he moved, he ran off a smaller 7-point and took him a minute to come back. And I later ranged where I shot at him, and I shot at him with his head down. Okay. So that tells you how good of a bow hunter I am at a long distance. 30 yards, I suck at bow hunting. I shot at him with his head down at 47 yards.
Okay.
And I think he ducked the arrow before I even pulled the trigger on my compound. I mean, it was terrible. Like I shot and I was like, man, that is terrible. Like it went way over it probably went 6 inches over his back. And I'm like, this sucks. And I was so mad. I was like, you know what? I've got a crossbow in my house and I'm sitting here 40 yards from the feeder where this deer, I shot at that deer 47 yards with a freaking compound and I've got a crossbow in my house. So I decided the next day, I actually made a video. I got it on my long form video on YouTube where I'm actually killing the deer. So the next day I'm like, I'm going back out that evening to hunt him. I'm not going to see him. He's a good deer. He's a mature buck, I think. And they don't get shot at twice, 2 days in a row, but I'm going out anyway. Yeah. And I told myself, I said, I'm going to shoot this thing with a crossbow, but I'm going to make this part of the video. And I did a little video, telling everybody like, hey, I got a crossbow here. I'm freaking using it. I love y'all, but I'm using it. I don't care what you say. And I ended up shooting that deer with that crossbow that night at 50 yards.
That's amazing, man. That's amazing.
Heart shot him. So I want to say that next day or two, I'm like, I got a perfect idea. I can bait everybody in with this. I'm transitioning bull crap. And, I'm going to relate it to the crossbow.
Sister, they're going to support me. My dad and my brother, I just don't know. I don't think they're gonna like it. And I was like, what's going on here?
Yeah, that's it. That's
Oh
it, man.
man, that was too funny. I
Yeah.
didn't know. I was like, all right, man. I guess if he wants to do his thing, chop his pecker off, that's what he's gonna do. And then you're like, I'm switching from compound to crossbow, and I was like, everything's still valid. Everything he just said is valid. You fooled me, man. That was
Yeah.
amazing. So, oh yeah. So to the listeners, obviously Trent does some hilarious shit. Make sure you follow him. I'm gonna put links to everything in the show notes, and at the end we'll talk a little bit more about that. But Trent, we're here to hear some stories, and that oddly enough, that became a pretty good story there, just talking about your social media clips. But I know you got a couple stories specifically prepared for us, man. What? Why don't you set the stage, man? Hey, hunters. Have you ever had one of those stories, the ones that you didn't want to tell, the ones that end in failure? Yeah, I've been there. Actually, you know what? The culprit for me usually is bad optics, or worse, lack of using my optics at all. Picture this. I spot a trophy buck, or an antelope, or an elk, whatever it may be. My heart is racing, but the blurry view, or I just can't quite identify exactly what I'm looking at, it has me second guessing. Well, that's where Vortex Optics comes in. With crystal clear glass and rugged durability, Vortex gives you the confidence to take the shot. Don't let poor optics ruin your story. Make every moment count. Upgrade to Vortex and turn your hunting tales into triumphs. Visit vortexoptics.com today.
Oh yeah. So, I mean, I guess I've got two that are like the biggest disappointments of my life. Um, I think everybody loves to hear others' pain. So,
Yeah, yeah.
and I've had if any of your listeners or followers of mine, they're gonna want to hear this because I've had a pretty jam up season this year so far. So they're looking for a little humble pie. Um, no, so like I think I started telling you earlier with my cousin Luke.
Yeah.
I made a short video about my first cousin Luke Ellis, who's an amazing hunter. I mean, he's amazing. He's 20 years old, just turned 20. Shout out to Luke. October 27th was his 20th birthday. So, amazing hunter. And but this year, September, during the velvet season, he smoked the deer that he killed. It had coat. It had. I got a Diet Mountain Dew can. I'm showing you right now. That on the
Yeah.
right side of this deer, that's the base.
No
I
shit.
mean,
That's
it
like
was
an
not.
elk
It,
antler.
it wasn't like a 170-inch Iowa buck. But I'm just telling the thickness on that deer's horns right
Yeah.
there.
Man, that's like
Big
an
old
elk
buck.
antler right there, man. That's
Yeah, I
crazy.
mean,
Yeah, watch
it was
out.
impressive. He killed a mature buck. But anyway, so Luke's always been like his daddy, and he's had just that luck. Like they're good, they're great hunters, great hunters. But man, I'm tell you, if somebody could be lucky, Luke and Sean Ellis, okay, are they lucky? They
Right?
they just it's like they go out there. I'll be hunting 5 days a week on public, and I'm gonna walk a mile, 2 miles every time, and my uncle Sean pull up, and he'll be like bringing his tree seat with him, and he'll be like, "Yeah, I'm gonna walk, I'm gonna limp down there, about 300, 400 yards and sit down, and he's gonna shoot a dead young 140-inch Pope and young." Like I'm just,
Yeah.
so,
Yeah. I've met plenty of
but
hunters like that on the podcast, man. People are like, yeah, all the time. There's two kind of hunters. There's guys that are like, yeah, I'm just lucky. I just put something down every time. And then there are the guys that are like, yeah, I hunted for 10 years before I got one. And I'm like, yeah, that
yeah,
sounds more like my shit. But yeah, there's
but
definitely those lucky guys out there.
so Luke kills that deer, and I was thinking about it with zero animosity. I was like, man, that's awesome. And but I was like, this would be a great video. So I made a phone call character video to where, a buddy of mine, quote unquote, calls me and asks me if I saw the deer Luke shot. And I go into, yeah, that's cool. And then he reminds me of the deer that Luke killed back in 2019, 2020.
Yeah.
Whenever, I can't remember, it was December of one of those years, but that was a true story, So I had been hunting this public ground, for a while, and found some really, really good sign. And Luke and his dad, Luke's younger brother, Levi, I took him with me, and Luke and Sean, I told them, I was like, y'all need to go over here to this specific area, and y'all
Yeah.
need to climb somewhere right in here. and I can't give out those details, or I could say one word, and a lot of people would be like, I know exactly what he's talking about. Anyway, so so I told them, I was like, I think y'all need to go over there, hunt there. Me and Levi, I'm gonna put him in the stand. Levi at the time, he was probably 12, 13 years old,
Yeah.
and Luke was, yeah, he was. I want to say Luke at the time was 14. 14. Levi might have been younger than that. So Luke was not a. I mean, Luke at the time didn't have his driver's license, and so we get to our spots, and I'm sitting there watching. Uh, can you say midget on this podcast?
You certainly can.
Okay, there was a midget comedian. I can't remember his name, but he's funny as all get out. And I was sitting there watching him because I mean, it was warm, the wind was blowing into the thicket, and I'm like, I'm not gonna see jack crap. So I'm sitting there watching him, and I hear something behind me, and I turn and I look behind me, and I mean, it's just a dadgum rocking chair. I mean, this son of a gun, he is wide, and he looks right up at me. He's 20 yards from me. As soon as I turn, he looks right up at me, and he wheels and runs. Well, I just immediately I throw my 308 up, and I'm boom, boom, boom. I mean, that sounds like a semi-automatic, and I got a bolt action. But I
Yeah.
was hunting in an area where the pine trees were like here, 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 like they were all around me. So it wasn't like I could wait and get a good lead on him. It's like I was trying to shoot through the gaps. And well, anyway, he runs out to about 200 yards, and I shoot, and he stumbles. And I'm like, oh
Okay.
crap, he just stepped into a hole, or I just waylaid his butt.
Yeah.
Well, he disappears, and I turn around, I start putting my gun on my back, and I'm like, oh man, here we go, here we go,
Feeling good.
here we go, feeling good. Luke texts me, and he's being a smart aleck. He's like, you gonna get him yet? You gonna get him yet? Dadgum boy. Because they're within earshot. They're
Yeah.
actually at the time they were just over 1,000 yards from me, and so I literally I turn around and I start climbing back down the tree, and I make 2 climbs down the tree, and I hear boom, boom, and immediately I just dropped. I was like, oh no, there's no
Yeah.
way, there is no way within 2 minutes of me shooting at this deer, Luke or Sean have shot another buck that's different. And I called Luke, and he's, oh my gosh, I just shot a freaking monster. He's dead. And I'm just like, oh, I'm so happy for you, bud. Because I know, I'm like, there's no way there's 2 monsters in here this
Yeah.
close. Like,
You're like, go ahead and count how many holes are in that deer right now.
yeah. So basically, that deer ran from my position and ran 70 yards in front of Luke. And Luke said he looked back in my direction because Luke knew exactly where we was hunting. We had orange on. We could see each other.
Yeah.
And he said he looked right back at my direction. When he did, he was broadside at 70 yards, and Luke shot him once right through the pump station, and he hit the ground and did that front crawl, and Luke shot him again, finished him off. It was a 6.5-year-old 8-point that was 18 and a quarter inches wide on public land.
Woo.
Yeah,
That's amazing.
that was the hardest time, because I'm like, I got my 14-year-old cousin here that has smoked a deer that is twice the size of anything I've ever killed.
Yeah.
And had I not been on my phone watching that comedian, maybe I could have hurt. You go through that whole thing, but you're also at the same time, you're like, hey, congratulations, buddy. I'm trying to be big cousin Trent here, being, you could tell Sean sitting over there, he's like, man, sorry, bud, that's how it goes. Like,
Yep. That's the truth, man. So I got to ask, where did your shot land, or did he step in a hole?
oh, thank you. So we get back to camp, and we hang the deer up, and Luke starts gutting it, and he says, "Dad gum, Trent, come here and look at this." And right here on his ear, right there on the inside of his ear, I mean,
Yeah.
half an inch from his brain, I shot that son gun right over the ear, right there.
Oh,
If I'd have been a half an inch to the right, I'd have hit him right in the brain and have dropped him dead. But
No
I shot
way.
that deer. Yep, it had a bullet. It had a bullet mark going right across the top of his ear right there
Yeah,
on the
you trumped
inside
him,
of it.
man. You trumped him.
Dude, I just stunned him. I did. I trumped him. That's right. That's right.
And
Yeah.
the deer stood up, pumped a fist, and said, "Fight, fight."
Yeah. Yeah. So that was like that you talking about pouring a gallon of salt in the wound. I'm like, oh my
Oh,
gosh, man, this is terrible.
yeah.
But
Well, at least I'll say like you didn't like hit it to the point that it maybe would have died if it had ran a little bit farther. You basically missed it. I mean, you hit it, but you didn't lethally hit it. So
oh dude, no,
yeah,
I counted that whole thing as a miss. Like that was it was it was terrible. It was
yeah,
terrible. It's still to this day probably the biggest deer that I've messed up on.
yeah.
But that was no, I think that was December of 2020 because it was it was no, I'm sorry. No. That was December of 2019 because 2020 I had a phenomenal year. I
Okay.
mean, I after 2020, I was like, you can't tell me nothing. And then for the last 3 years, it's been 2021, 2022, and 2023 has just been like, let's break you down, boy.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah, for sure, man. That's awesome.
So
It reminded me of a story. I'll tell you real quick. It's actually not my story, but it's from my father-in-law who's passed away, and my brother-in-law and my other buddy. But they were in Washington hunting elk with muzzleloaders, so 50
mhm.
cal, open sights, having fun. They just had, I think, cow tags, nothing but cow, or maybe it was spike tags. Yeah, spike tags. So they're sitting, I don't know, maybe 150 yards from each other, but like with the topography, there's no risk of injury or anything. They're hill between them. And one of them, my buddy Steven, he's sitting there and two spikes roll in. And he just is like, all right, hell yeah. And boom, and he fires one and they both just take off. And they run around the corner basically and go to my brother-in-law who's on the other side. So this is why I remember this, right? The animal running from one hunter to the other. My brother-in-law goes and he pulls up his and he's like, oh shit, there's two here. So he fires at one. Meanwhile, my father-in-law is like 2 feet away from him, sleeping. So like I don't know how he slept through the first shot, but like those 50 cal muzzle loaders, like he lost his shit, like getting woken up like just by the loudest boom, smoke everywhere. He woke up screaming, almost like ran. He just like woke up running basically. By the way, they did
Uh-huh.
kill. Luckily, he did shoot the other ones. They ended up dropping two spikes in the period of like 30 seconds. And they say it was the worst pack out they've ever had. But it reminded me of that story, and it always makes me laugh thinking about my father-in-law just like from dead sleep to shocked out of his mind from a muzzleloader going off 2 feet from him. So,
Yeah.
but man, that's a great story. Was the comedian Brad Williams? That's the only
Yes.
midget comedian I can think of.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, he's a funny
Yes.
dude. Yeah, and a
Yeah,
Broncos fan.
it was hilarious. I can't remember exactly. I just remember what he was wearing. He was wearing his bow tie, white shirt, black vest, rolled up sleeves. I remember it like it was yesterday, and it was a great. I can't remember exactly what bit he was doing, but it was
Yeah,
hilarious. And I was sitting there kind of having a little belly roll, and I heard that right behind me. I'm like, "What was that?" And it was kind of at the point in season where you're used to squirrels, so
yeah.
you're not really, on alert all the time. Yeah, it was. It was bad. It was bad.
That's too funny, man. That's too funny. And your cousin's name is Luke, right?
Yeah, Luke
Yeah,
Ellis. Yeah.
Luke Ellis,
They
man. What does he think about that? Does he feel ever? Have you ever told that he feels sorry that you missed that one, or is he rubbing it in your face?
dude, no. Dude, Luke does not feel sorry at all, dude. No. First of all, Luke's 20. He's a 20-year-old and a 58-year-old's body and mind, okay?
Yeah,
Pretty much. So, I mean, anytime you talk to him, he's like talking to an old man that went to school in 78, you
yeah,
know? But I mean, he seriously, he he's just he was good about it. Like he didn't try to rub it in or nothing like that. Like even at 14, he knew what kind of position I was in, and he wasn't going to sit there and just completely celebrate and talk it
yeah,
up.
yeah.
I mean, he knew he was mature enough then to know like this is awesome,
That's
and I'm going
funny.
to celebrate, but I'm going to save it until when Trent's not around.
Yeah, that
Uh,
reminds me of Coulter Wall. Are you familiar with Coulter Wall, the
oh
musician?
yeah, oh
That guy
yeah.
looks like he's 12, but his voice, man, is 75 years old.
Oh, that was insane. The first video I ever looked him up on because he's younger than me. I'm
Yeah,
29,
yeah,
and I looked
he's a
him
baby.
up. He yeah, he does. He sounds like he's 70. Like he
Yeah.
smoked a carton of cigarettes a week for the last 30 years, you know?
Yeah, man. Right, right? I went to go see him at a show one time. He was supposed to come, and I looked him up, and I was like, "What is this?" And I was actually before he had a mustache, so he looked even younger. And I'm like, "No way, that guy is singing this music." He
Yeah.
actually ended up not making it to that concert because he got in a bar fight in Canada. He was 18 at the time, or 19. Got in a bar fight, got concussed, and couldn't fly to the show. So he ended up never making it down. So,
Wow.
but yeah,
That's
I
crazy.
totally understand the old man and the young man's body. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
All
I
right,
got I
man.
got one more story if you
Perfect.
got
Let's
time
go.
for it.
I got all the time in the world.
Yeah, the probably the biggest heartbreak um was me and my brother were on public back in 2020. I think it was 21 or 22. And we were walking, we had gotten in late. I think it was probably 7:30 when we got to the gate because it had been raining all night and we were trying to time it like it was going to be a perfect day because the rain was going to stop at like 8 o'clock. And we're
Yeah.
like, oh heck yeah, man, let's get out here and let's get out here right when it stops and the ground will be wet so the deer, we can slip. And it was rifle season, and where we were going was a big bottom, big slough bottom and everything, so you can see in certain areas a decent ways. And we're just gonna slip. Well, we get back there about a mile, and we notice there's a doe in the distance, a little over 100 yards from us. And we're like, man, that's let's sit here for a minute. So we sat there, and we're right before a bend in the trail, and
Yeah.
this trail is in the middle of the hardwood bottom, right next to a river. And or I say it's a bigger creek,
Okay.
wouldn't be big enough to take many boats down. But anyway, um, we we get back here and we're watching this doe for maybe 5 or 10 minutes, and Trey looks at me and he's like, we still want to climb. He said, do you want to sit here and watch her? Or do you want to go ahead and get in the saddle and bump her off? And I was like, yeah, let's just go ahead and move through and bump her off, and we'll get in the saddle and sit till 1 or 2 o'clock. Well, we take 10 steps, and as soon as we do, we round this, barely, you could call it a corner. And as soon as we round it, on the trail in front of us, probably 70 yards, I mean, there is a giant. And he is broadside. And he literally just turns his head and looks at both of us. And at the time, I am so overwhelmed. I'm like praying to God, thanking God. I'm like, thank you so much. As I'm raising up on this deer, I'm like, thank you, Jesus. This is so easy. Like, I thank you so much. Boom! And that deer just keeps looking at me.
Oh no.
And I'm like, are you sick? And I start to put another round in there, and as soon as I do that, he runs off, and there's a couple of deer behind him. The doe runs off. And dude, I'm not kidding. I take the gun, I grab the barrel, and I take the gun and I bring it across my back. And I'm fixing to like snap this thing, because that was the second deer that year that I had missed.
No shit.
The second deer with a gun that I missed. Now the other one was right at day. It was like 6:03 a.m. Could barely see it through my scope, but it was legal, and I misjudged the distance. I thought it was 100 yards. It was 180. And but so I gave myself some forgiveness on that one. But this one was like 70 yards from me. And I've never had a problem missing deer especially with a gun.
Yeah.
And so I got to the point, I was so infuriated. I brought that gun on my back and I went to snap. I was going to do everything I could to snap that gun.
Good
And
luck,
my brother stops me. He's like, no, don't. He's like, dude, are you shooting those freaking ballistic tips? And I'm like, yeah. He said, man, I know you didn't see this. He said, but there was a huge branch in front of that deer. And he said, as soon as you shot, he said, I saw the center of that thing blow up. And we went up there, and there was a big vine that was probably, a little bit smaller than a Coke can.
Okay.
That was in front of that deer about 10 yards. And
Damn.
I shot, it was right. I guess it was right in line. And it was still at the point in time, like it was overcast, even though it was like 8 o'clock, 8:30,
Yeah.
it was still overcast to where, you could see good enough, but you couldn't see everything in like a vine, especially in that situation. And I smoked that darn vine. And it just, as soon as that bullet hit it, it blew up. And so I'm still infuriated. And this is not the best part of the story. So I'm trying to be mature. I'm trying to be mature and say, you know what, I'm however old I was, 25, 26, whatever. I'm like, I got a wife at home and I need to grow up a little bit. All right, let's keep going. Let's
Yeah.
keep going.
Quick,
We're at this
question.
point.
Quick question was, after you missed the first deer earlier in that season, did you go to the range and sight it and go, nothing wrong with this, I don't understand what happened? Or did you just chalk that up to a bad shot when you missed? Are you ready to elevate your archery game? Summit Bowstrings delivers premium strings for all archers, crafted with bloodline fiber and BCY material stretched for unmatched consistency. Choose from 3 series: Hunter, Competition, and Summit. Each string is built bison tough with unique techniques for extreme durability and performance. Ideal for both seasoned hunters and target archers. Experienced strings designed to handle any challenge. Visit summitbowstrings.com and use HSP10 for a 10% discount.
I think. Okay, I chalked that one up as a bad shot.
Okay.
After this, though, I did go and check my gun.
Okay.
After this, I went and checked my gun, and I was dead on.
Okay.
I was dead on. So, yeah. So it was not the gun's fault at all. But I'm like, all right, Trey, let's keep going. Let's get to our spots because the deer ran to where we were going, and so we had about another 300-400 yards till Trey got to his spot, and then I was going to continue on walking and go down another couple of 100 yards and turn in and go to mine. Well, Trey turns in. Trey's my brother. I don't know if I said that or whatever, but Trey's my brother, and he turns in to the slough bottom area that he's going to go, and I keep walking down. Well, when I get to my turn, I turn in, and I walk maybe, gosh, I don't know, 50 yards.
Okay.
And in between Trey and I, there's like a big cane thicket, if you will. And all of a sudden, I hear, and I look up, and it's the same freaking deer.
No way.
And he's running through the cane, his racks just like that. And this time, he comes out at 40 yards.
Get your crossbow, man. Get your crossbow.
Dude. So I'm sitting there going back, and I'm like, oh, thank you, Jesus. You're merciful. Thank you. And I pull up on him at 40. And I got the crosshairs as he's loping. I'm like, this is a dead. He's going on my wall, son. This is going to be the best story in the world. Click.
Oh God, no. What happened?
I racked the shell and try to get back on him. He crosses the river and goes across, and I can't ever get back on him. He's chasing does, and I immediately, I'm like, okay, I know I had another round in there. So I walked back to where I tried, because I had to walk up another 50 yards to try to get on him across the river. And so I walked back and find the shell. There is the most faint of a point to where the firing pin hit the bullet.
Yeah.
Just the most faint little
like
dot
cap,
there.
yeah. Okay.
And so I get to my tree, and I start punching the tree a good bit, once I get up there and get down. Well, the next day, I'm going squirrel hunting with my buddy up here. And I said, I got my 308 in the truck. And I said, man, I got this shell, and I got my 308. And I told him the story. I said, let me shoot this gun real quick. So we put a target out there at 80 yards. Same shell.
Yeah.
Same shell. Same gun. Throw it in there. Boom. Dead on.
It's just that was
just one of the, dude, that was one of those days that God was like, today is not your day, and I am going to build some patience with you, buddy.
I'm going to test you. Today.
Today's a building day for you. Yeah. And it was, so it was just one of those things, like, because my brother was like, do you think you didn't seat the bolt down all the way? And I'm like, no, heck no. That was not the case at all. It was just for whatever, and that's to this day, That is the only misfire I've had with that gun, and that's a Browning X bolt that I've had for now 15 years.
That's insane. That's
Yeah.
insane, especially that the round then went off the next time you tried it. That's
Oh
crazy,
yeah,
man.
it was a Hornady. It was a Hornady. I can't remember. It wasn't American Whitetail, but it was a Hornady something. So it was a good round too. You know, it wasn't like I bought a box of 20 for $19 at Walmart. You know, I mean, they were good shells, good gun, everything. It was just, yeah. So I have nightmares on the daily or on the weekly about both of those deer. So
just that deer's day, man. Good for him, man. He survived you twice.
Yeah.
Well, Trent, man, those are great stories, man. I often get a lot of feedback that I need more whitetail stories. So that's great because sometimes whitetail hunters are like, well, I just go sit in the blind. So it's fun to hear those stories, even though you don't necessarily love those stories. People like to hear them. So thank you, man. Any more pop to the top of your head, or you want to wrap it right there? Up to you, sir.
Man, I think we've pretty much wrapped the good ones right there.
Perfect.
I've got some successful ones, but I'll have to come back on another day and give you some success ones.
Yeah, you know what's funny is more often than not we get those stories of like what went wrong because like those are more memorable sometimes, and definitely in your case, right? Then just walked out there, shot that deer, went back to the truck and had some beers. Like that's not that great of a story, but you miss a deer twice in one day. Yeah, that's the way you want it, but it's not always how you get it. So
yeah.
All right, man. Well, let's do this then. Why don't you tell the people where they can find you? Give them your YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, whatever you got, and we'll share that in the show notes.
Okay. So you can find me on every single platform at just my name, Trent Ellis, TrentEllis. The only thing that's different on Instagram is it's Trent_Ellis21.
Okay.
But yeah, if you type in my name, I'll be the only guy that looks like me with a blue check mark by his name. So that's
transitioning.
Yeah.
Cool.
I do 6 comedy shorts, a week that I put on every single platform. And then I try to, do 2 to 3 long form videos a month on YouTube. So, that's geared, more serious, but still got some witty stuff in there. Just me being me.
Perfect, man. I was going to ask if you kind of just wing your videos, but it sounds like if you're doing them that consistently, you're probably putting a fair amount of planning into the videos you're putting together. Is that right?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm putting together, I try to get all my videos shot on Monday.
Okay.
If I have any carryover on Tuesday, but like this week, next week we'll be in Gatlinburg for a few days, with some friends of ours. And, so I'll have to get all my next week videos done today and tomorrow and Sunday, and I'll space them out. But I just get the premise of what I'm doing. And then I kind of, once I've got the premise, I kind of have fun with it when I shoot the video and just kind of let it flow, try not to write a script or anything like that.
Cool, man. Cool. Well, I love what you're doing. You've cracked me up regularly, and I'm in a couple groups with a bunch of hunters, and your videos seem to keep showing up, man. So I knew I had to get in touch with you. So thank you, Trent. I really appreciate it, brother.
Hey, I appreciate the invite, Michael.
Yeah, of course. All right, guys, that's it. Another couple stories in the books. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I also know I've been mentioning a fair amount about voting recently. It's all done. Thank goodness. Happy to have that crap off TV, and a lot of the things I was rooting for happened. Hopefully they did for you too. If you went out and voted and you took someone with you, thank you guys very much. Trent, thank you, of course, for coming on the podcast. I really do appreciate you, brother, and your content is hilarious. Keep it up, man. I really do appreciate that. You listeners, if you aren't following Trent, do it. If you aren't following the Hunting Stories podcast on Instagram, do it. Whatever you're listening to this on right now, please give us a follow and review us so that we can get more people listening, more people reaching out to tell some fun stories. But that's it, guys. Thank you so much. Now get out there and make some stories of your own.